Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday, December 31st. We have an active weather pattern that will continue right into the new year. In fact, it looks like quite an interesting weather pattern setting up for the month of January, partly as a result of a stratospheric warming event that is continuing to unfold, and it is most certainly going to have an impact on the weather across Canada and the U.S. During the month of January. Especially in the eastern U.S., maybe we're talking about after the 10th or so of January, certainly the middle and latter parts of January could be impacted by this ongoing stratospheric warming event. In the near term, we have not one but two different low pressure systems over the next few days that will impact much of the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast U.S. Not much cold air around, but that doesn't mean there can't be some sleet and freezing rain with the initial system in some suburban locations, and maybe in a mixing with or even a changeover to snow in parts of the Mid-Atlantic region on Sunday, especially likely across the northeastern part of the nation. First, let's start off with the stratospheric warming event. We've been talking about this for several days now. This is a 30-day loop of the stratospheric temperatures way up at the top of the atmosphere, 10 millibar level, and what we're looking at here is the polar region right in this area right here. There's 90 degrees north, 60 degrees north, so really interested in the polar region when it comes to stratospheric warming, and this 30-day loop of the temperature shows this warming, significant warming, this kind of a warm blob that develops mostly on the Asian side of the pole. Greenland right here, U.S. right in this region right here, and we have had significant warming over the past several days, again on the Asian side of the pole, and stratospheric warming this time of the year can set off a chain of events that will lead to the transfer of very cold air from the polar region down into the middle latitude. Sometimes it goes onto the Asian side of the North Pole, other times it can go into the North American side of the North Pole, into Canada and the U.S. And the way it's setting up, I think, increases the odds for some cold air outbreaks into the central and eastern U.S. Let's say by the middle part of January, going into the latter part of January. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks after a stratospheric warming event for things to really get going, for things to get impacted in the upper part of the atmosphere all the way down into the middle latitude. So this is certainly something we will monitor going into the new year, which of course begins tomorrow. Again, it suggests very interesting weather could be setting up for a month, much of the month of January across Canada and the U.S. Well, before we talk about the short term, the two different low pressure systems that will have an impact over the next few days, let's look at this still image, this still a plot of stratospheric temperatures. Again, we're looking way up at the top of the atmosphere, 10 millibar level. This is kind of a top-down view of the pole. This is the North Pole circle right in this region right here, U.S. down here. And again, typically this time of the year you have a polar vortex, a cold blob of air in the upper part of the atmosphere sitting near or over the North Pole. Stratospheric warming event can dislodge that polar vortex, can break it apart into pieces, and all of that can lead to a chain of events that leads to cold air outbreaks into the lower latitudes, the middle latitudes, with the transfer of air from the poles down to the middle latitudes. And look at this. This is a kind of a warm blob that we just saw developing over the past 30 days. This is on the Asian side, the Siberian side of the North Pole. Much warmer conditions here as compared to here at the top of the atmosphere. Again, it's kind of pushing that polar vortex maybe on the North American side of the North Pole, and all of this can lead to some important ramifications come, let's say, after the 10th of January or so, the middle part of January in the central and eastern U.S. Something we will monitor closely over the next several days and really over the next few weeks. Let's now take a look at the near term, and again, not much cold air around in the mid-Atlantic region, but doesn't mean we won't have to deal with some frozen precipitation. It looks like this first system can throw certainly some sleet and freezing rain in parts of the mid-Atlantic region, certainly those higher elevation areas to the north and west of I-95, even in some of the far suburbs, in northern western suburbs along I-95. I'll have to watch out for a brief period at the onset tomorrow for some sleet or freezing rain. And then the Sunday system, we'll look at that in a moment here, certainly has the chance for pulling in enough cold air to see a mixing with or even a changeover from rain to snow later Sunday in at least parts of the mid-Atlantic region, and certainly across New England and much of the northeastern U.S. could be a changeover to accumulating snow with this second system late in the weekend. Let's walk through the latest NAM model. This is from 12Z, the 12-kilometer version of the NAM model. We have a weak cold frontal system pushing right through the I-95 corridor right now. It had some decent shower activity earlier today. That has dissipated some, maybe a residual shower or two of rain this afternoon. And let's just move forward here. That pushes on just to the south and east of the district by early tonight. And notice kind of a cold high pressure system starting to intensify here over the northeastern part of the nation in the overnight hours. That represents the anchor of a cold and dry air mass, a fresh influx of colder and drier air as this first low pressure system starts to make a move to the north and east. And that presents the possibility of sleet and freezing rain at the onset of this system later tomorrow into tomorrow night. And that's despite the fact that the surface low pressure area goes way up to the north and west of the I-95 corridor region into the Midwest and then the Great Lakes region. But when this moisture arrives midday tomorrow, could be cold enough to the north and west of D.C., even to the north and west of Philly and New York City in the afternoon for a brief period of sleet, maybe even some freezing rain, especially in those higher elevation, far northern and western suburbs along the I-95 corridor region. There'll be accumulating snow later tomorrow in the western portion of the Midwest. And eventually, with that surface low going well to the west of the I-95 corridor region, enough milder air will come in by late tomorrow, especially tomorrow night, cause a changeover to plain rain in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. In fact, temperatures are likely to rise during the night tomorrow night, but meantime, still some accumulating snow out across the Great Lakes and the upper part of the Midwest. Then we go into the overnight hours tomorrow night. Again, temperatures continuing to rise in the I-95 corridor region. And this is the forecast map for Saturday morning. Quite a mild day on Saturday in the wake of this initial low pressure system. There will not be a cold air intrusion behind this initial storm on Saturday. In fact, temperatures should rise well up into the 50s in D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City. However, once this low reaches southeastern Canada later in the day on Saturday, it'll drag a cold front through the I-95 corridor region, right in this region, right here at that time. In fact, let's draw this. This is the forecast map for later Saturday afternoon. And here's, let me get this right here. Here's that cold frontal system right in this area. Right here comes Saturday afternoon. So that drives south and east. In other words, by the time we get to Saturday evening, we have another fresh influx of colder and drier air in time for the next storm system. But again, it's only a marginally cold air mass for this time of the year. Nonetheless, with that kind of fresh influx of colder air, watch out in areas interior Pennsylvania, upstate Pennsylvania on Sunday morning. Even in the far northern western suburbs of Philly, could be just cold enough for some frozen precipitation, maybe some sleet, maybe some snow mixed in. primarily a rain event at the start, certainly in D.C. and in Philadelphia. But as this system pushes off the mid-Atlantic coastline, it could wrap enough cold air in on its northwest side to change to accumulating snow in places like upstate New Jersey, higher elevation regions, especially of northwestern New Jersey, just to the north and west of New York City, even into east central Pennsylvania, maybe even the far northern suburbs of Philadelphia. Could be a change, at least a mixing with maybe even a changeover to snow later in the day on Sunday. So something to watch for, and then that pushes to the north and east, and some accumulating snow likely for interior sections of the northeastern part of the nation later on Sunday. So two different storm systems to deal with over the next few days in the mid-Atlantic region, in the northeast U.S., and despite the fact that there's no real cold air around right now, there will be a fresh influx of colder air tonight, perhaps setting the stage for a brief period of sleet and freezing rain, especially north of the Mason-Dixon line on Friday, especially in those higher elevation suburbs well to the north and west of I-95. And then another fresh influx of somewhat colder and drier air comes in Saturday night, setting the stage for a close call on Sunday, and perhaps it'll lead to a mixing with or a changeover to snow from rain north and west of the I-95 corridor region later on Sunday, especially from east central Pennsylvania to northeastern PA, interior upstate New Jersey, and just to the north and west of New York City. So a lot going on, not only over the next few days, but perhaps over the next few weeks. I'm especially concerned about a colder and stormy period for the central and eastern U.S., let's say from the 10th or 15th of January, perhaps lasting as long as into the early part of February, again, partly as a result of this ongoing stratospheric warming event. So that's it for now for PerspectiveWeather.com. This is the last video of 2020. That's it for now. I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.